Let us go ahead and call the meeting for July 10th of the Charter Review Committee to order, please. Ms. Bonner, did you want to do the roll call? You most definitely don't have to. We know and trust you, so.
Mr. Pearson.
Present.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Backus.
Present.
Ms. Wilhelmy.
Here?
Ms. Turnley. Here. Mr. Bryant. Mr. Lewis.
Present.
Mr. Powell.
Present.
Mr. Coleman.
Present.
Mr. Wembley.
I'm not sure where Lonnie is.
Okay. Mr. Fouché.
Present.
Okay. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I ask all of us to stand and pledge allegiance to our country's flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Todd would be up next, but I do not see Mr. Todd. So, Mr. James Williams, is he here?
No, ma'am. I received an email this morning from Mr. Williams stating he would not be available to attend today's meeting. However, he reserves his right to.
As is his privilege. Very good. All right. So let's go ahead and move on down to the minutes. You all received those through the Outlook system yesterday? And I'm going to flip back to my.
Let me just use this one.
Do we have any amendments to the minutes as submitted?
Did we get a copy of the minutes?
Can you get a copy? Okay.
Oh, you mean, never mind.
Oh, God, those two.
Ms. Robinson, were you able to receive your email on yesterday? You've seen them? Oh, okay. All right. We can make that available after today's meeting if you need another copy.
Okay. Any amendments to the minutes?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
item 3, I'd like to see the minutes reflect the passion of Mr. Copenhaver. He had a lot to say in our meeting, and I think that his comments should be reflected. Without objection, I spoke to Mr. Copenhaver this morning. I sent him a copy of these minutes, and I said, does this adequately represent your position? He said, in summary, it is my great hope that the Charter Review Committee will thoroughly review the best practices of other consolidated municipal governments in serving the greater good of their citizenry as a whole, as opposed to having their actions dictated by serving a vocal minority, and update our charter to reflect these best practices accordingly. It is my firm belief that the work of the committee should have a focus on putting people over politics, and I believe the citizens of Augusta deserve a government that can be a source of civic pride as opposed to being a source of division, mistrust, and animosity. I'd like those comments included in the minutes if we could, please, ma'am, without objection.
I have no problem with that.
Madam Chair, are we talking about the current meeting or the?
Reflecting the meeting of June 25th?
I'll ask our parliamentarian if we could add that on as minutes, since you're reading his
if-
statement from today. They can be added in today's meeting as a reference to last week's meeting. However, in just to make a point, our minutes are action minutes. It's what you're dealing with. Mr. Copenhaver came in and did a presentation. There was no official action to receive his statement into the records with a motion. So,
Madam Chair, I understand the sentiment being spoken, but I don't believe these minutes adequately represent passion that Mayor Copenhaver had in his presentation.
yes, sir, if you can allow me to finish, I will further explain that we do have audio of what Mayor Copenhaver shared with the committee that is on record, that is available to the public, but it was just a presentation with no formal action. And it is available. However, if this committee needs that information to do an official act on, certainly we can provide that to the committee. But that's the reason why it wasn't.
Mr. Plunkett, is there not provision to add materials that support the minutes to?
Generally, I think that Ms. Bonner is correct, is you're reflecting the meeting of that time. Part of the issue that my concern is this, is that when we go into adjectives, that it was passionate, it was or brilliant, or whatever that may be, or was horrible, that has the clerk kind of getting involved into influencing. What I would suggest, if there's, in terms of a bit of a compromise, is that today's meeting minutes could reflect the statement that has been read by Mr. Fouché, and last week's minutes, or the last meeting minutes, could also reflect that Mr. Former Mayor Copenhaver's presentation is available online for anyone who's interested to review that. I think that would be, it's a little bit of, belt and suspenders, because we know that it's there, but that would be in light of the fact.
So you're saying pull it out of the actual presentation as a separate?
No, just simply say that former mayor made gave a presentation, which is available online at the CRC website. Add that, so then anybody who wants to see what's discussing. On today's minutes, then it would reflect that Mr. Fouché, in the discussion of the minutes, read a statement by Mr. Copenhaver, which is attached. That is, in fact, an action in that regard. But as Ms. Bonner is saying, we typically want our minutes to be benign, I guess would be the best way to say, and it reflects what happened, and not having Ms. Bonner or me or the chair or anyone kind of give an inflection to that. So if I may, I think that what I would suggest is the minutes be approved reflecting that Mr. Copenhaver provided a presentation which could be reviewed online.
Mr. Lewis?
Madam Chair, if I'm not mistaken, you had a motion that was placed on the floor. Although the discussion is great, I never heard a second.
Second.
That's Ms. Robinson seconding. And Mr. Lewis is making the primary.
Wait. The motion is to add that to the minutes?
The motion is
It's
to approve the minutes.
Okay, just making sure. Oh, second.
So you have a motion and a second to accept as written, and then we'll add to.
You announce who made the motion and who seconded.
Mr. Lewis moved and Ms. Robinson seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions? If not, please cast your votes.
Ms. Wilhelmie?
Agree?
Ms. Turnley? Agree. Mr. Pearson? Agree. Mr. Bryant? Agree. Thank you.
All right.
That motion carries. It's unanimous.
We were expecting Mayor Davis, who I don't see in the audience here. So we will move on to the next one. Old business under Carl Vinson.
Yes, I believe you all have received and had a chance to review the edits that were, language that essentially was duplicative of state code, and our recommendation is that not be included, in part because if state law changes, that part of the charter becomes irrelevant, and plus it's messy.
Does anybody have any comments about that? If not, can we entertain a motion to accept as submitted?
So moved.
Second, okay, so that was Ms. Robinson making the motion, Mr. Powell seconding that. Any further discussion? If not, please cast your votes.
Ms. Wilhelmie?
Yes?
Ms. Turnley? Yes. Mr. Pearson? Yes. Mr. Bryant?
Yes.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you. Then if you want to discuss the state edits, which are, everybody's had the chance to review as well.
So the second set of files that you received were elements that we suggest are better dealt with in ordinance rather than a statute. Now, I don't think you've had as much time to review those. And so we didn't know if you had any questions about any of those items that you would like us to address.
If not, can we entertain a motion to accept as submitted? Okay, motion.
I think my notice was
We're
on.
going to get a motion on the floor and then we'll discuss. So Mr. Coleman made the motion, Mr. Powell seconded. Okay, now, Mr. Wimberly, go ahead.
In the editing that you've done, is there any kind of language you intend to supply that's going to show what was replaced or what was, they don't like the word red line?
Sure, the strike through. So the way the process is working is you all receive the highlight version to help you see what's being covered. Once you make a decision to approve removing that, then we create the strike-through version and post that on that strike-through version on the web so that everybody can see what has actually been done. And so there is now a master document that has the strike-throughs and will continue to have those strike-throughs for all of the sections that have been changed or by your motions. That help? Okay.
Very good. So we're discussing number 4B, moving items that should be dealt with under ordinances out of the charter. It's not charter language, not charter business. We're trying to reduce the scope of what we actively have to work on. There's a motion on the floor.
My light is on.
Thank you. Sheffy, go ahead now. Miss Robinson, excuse me.
Sure. For the purposes of the public, I think when we have these, we need to cover this in the actual meeting. Because yes, we have seen this information, but the public has not. So in the future, if you could have like a short presentation of the strike-throughs that we're proposing so that that is heavily documented, that would be great.
And we're happy to do that. We would be happy to walk you through those, today if you would like, and so it's the preference of the committee.
Ms. Backus?
I actually think if you can just give like an example of some of the things, you know what I mean?
Sure,
That way the
sure.
public has an idea of, because we're not just randomly saying, yes, take all of this stuff out. And I think even just an example or two might be super helpful. I know you guys have given us those examples, and that's been very helpful for me to understand what you're doing.
And I will let the experts, deal with that, the ones who actually slog through all of this, so.
So this is like the state constitution. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or Lori, even if you could just state why ordinances don't belong in a charter.
Well, they're two separate things, so it's not a matter of ordinance don't belong. It's more of the subject matter. Because as you know, Constitution set out the framework. And when you get into ordinances, you're getting into the nitty-gritty. There's really no reason for alcoholic beverages to be in a charter. It should be in the ordinances because it's expounding on what powers in the charter. Right, and it's going to be needed as the laws change with the state. It may need to be updated and changed. It's a lot easier in the ordinances. So some of them were traffic regulations, advertising, forest lands and minerals. I mean, those are the sort of things that you don't, as we've stated before, you don't get into the nitty-gritty like that in charters. And you need to do it more in the ordinances so that, like I said, you can expound on it, you can set out the parameters, you can set out the penalties, those sort of things, so that the public knows exactly what the laws are within the city limits on these issues within the county, and also it can be changed easily, because if it's in the charter, it's a lot harder.
Absolutely.
Some other ones were nuisances, streetlights, that should go under the public works, or you call it public utilities here, right? Not public works. Recreational programs like parks and rec, that should be in the ordinances. Some other areas, animal control, there's no reason for that to be in the chart. It should really be in the ordinances. So there are things like that.
And just to clarify, we did previously discuss y'all would go on ahead and give the commission a list of the ordinances that were being removed so that they can update that as needed outside of the charter where.
Yes, yes. So that they will have time, when this goes before the legislature, they can kind of, for lack of a better word, tee it up and have those ordinances drafted. So as soon as the charter gets voted on, it would probably be voted on in a November election, they can go ahead and start their process of enacting those ordinances so that there's no lapse.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work. This is a lot that y'all have done on this.
No, it's our pleasure. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. No further comments. Please cast your vote.
Ms. Wilhelmy?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Turnley? Yes. Mr. Pearson? Yes. Mr. Bryant? Yes. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Todd, if it's okay with you, we're working with Carl Vinson. Can you speak after they wrap their portion up? Okay, thank you. All right, the next thing up is letter 4C. It is a discussion about the strong mayor model and the details associated with it.
So I guess the question is, as we have previously discussed, the strong mayor holds the primary executive authority. They would appoint department heads and other officials. They develop and submit the budget, and they oversee the daily operations of the government. It could be with an administrator or without. It varies across jurisdictions. We tend to see larger governments that are more sophisticated use a professional administrator, even with a strong mayor model. And so I'm not sure what other questions y'all would like us to address on this issue.
Ms. Robinson?
First off, I would like us to stop using the language strong and weak mayor. It is not the objectivity we need in this process. Mayor-led model versus commission-led model is much more objective than strong versus weak, because strong versus weak has certain connotations that could be seen as leading. So I would like us to not use that language if possible going forward, so that, again, we can maintain objectivity. The major thing I want to see within this, because we have in front of us, of course, the different municipalities that we've looked at thus far. And a couple of things I want to note for the record is Augusta does not have an executive branch. And when I say that, it's because the mayor sits on the commission and the mayor has a vote in the commission. That effectively makes him part of the legislative branch, which means there's no checks and balances across our executive branch. So whatever way we go with deciding how the mayor's job operates with this city, the executive branch and the legislative branch have to be separated. And we have to keep that in mind, because right now we don't have any separation of power at all. The analysis I did across the different charters that we reviewed, it's highly, highly unorthodox for a mayor to sit on the commission and have a vote. And then there's been, of course, a lot of conversation about veto. So essentially, in a quote unquote strong mayor model or mayor-led model, if we are to continue down that path, the mayor would have absolute power. And that is not a structure that works for the people, because that limits representation. Having one person represent the entire city in its entirety with zero checks and balances doesn't make good for a sufficient government. So I wanted that to be put on note in this conversation. Now, the biggest question I have for you guys with regard to that is, with the information we have in front of us across the consolidated governments, most all of them have a mayor, except here you have Caseta, Chattahoochee, Georgetown, and Webster that have commissioners, but is there a mayor sitting on those? Or is this just some commissioners?
Those are just commissioners.
Okay.
And those are also very small governments.
Got it.
And so across Georgia, we still have a few sole commissioners. That's one of them, but it is very, very rare.
Okay. So typically you see the mayor, council, manager form of government, right? Because that's what we're seeing on this one. So is it mayor, council, manager, or mayor, council, administrator?
So, yes. so that's where it becomes a little, there is not a singular, in the academic literature, for example, they say it's really hard to differentiate sometimes between managers and administrators, the way that the roles of administrators have often expanded. But one of the other things that is sometimes challenging is when you have commission or council manager forms, they often do have a mayor, but that mayor is essentially a member of the council. And so it does become a bit more blurred, but the executive role shifts over to the manager in that case. And so the commission, with a mayor sitting on it, becomes the legislative check against the executive role, which is headed up by the manager.
Right.
And so the major check in that case is that the manager can be removed by a majority vote of the commission.
So in that sense, like in our government now, that's our city administrator doesn't have enough power to be considered an executive.
That's correct.
So would it be feasible, in your experience thus far, to have mayor, council, manager, where the mayor sits on the council and manages the manager? or mayor, council, administrator, where the mayor and the administrator are kind of their executive branch and then the legislative separately?
So I'll give my opinion, and I'm not certain that that opinion is the same perspective as my colleagues, and so I will reserve the right for them to also chime in. So part of the challenge is who oversees the manager in that very scenario. If it is the mayor only, then that mayor has a significantly greater amount of authority, and that the person under the mayor is rarely a manager. And so in that model, the person under the mayor is generally an administrator, because they're only reporting to the mayor. Now, it is possible to have a model like Augusta, because Augusta has it, where you have a mayor that is a voting member of the council, and the administrator is reporting to everybody. That is a less common and a bit more messy, because the administrator doesn't have the same level of authority where you can hold the administrator accountable in the same way you could a manager. So if a manager makes a bad hiring decision about department heads, you then you remove that manager. Now, if the administrator makes a bad decision, they can't, because it's really the commission that's making all those decisions about who the department heads are. And so that becomes much less effective because the lines of responsibility are blurry on what the administrator actually controls and doesn't control, and who that administrator reports to directly. So, Lori? Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment. I think he was saying it, but I just kind of want to get it out there. I don't want you to get too stuck up on the nomenclature, because, as I've said before, in Georgia, they might call it an administrator, but they're really a manager. So you can't just go by the title. They kind of blur those. The more you have to look at the powers of the person to determine what they are, what their role
Right,
is.
and that part's fair, but, just for the purposes of the public, having definitive language is helpful.
And also, this is just for you as a kind of history.
Sure.
Some of these consolidated governments in South Georgia are very rural, and the reason that they became consolidated, at least one, I think it was Eccles, it might have been another one, is that the towns there were no longer offering the services, and some of them might have been unincorporated. So what they did then was just consolidate everything.
Right.
So that happens a lot in some of the rural counties.
So,
And by a lot, we mean 3 times. Yeah.
got it. So also, and then I'll concede from here. So, in looking at the populations of these areas where we see the 5 at-large commissioners, those cities have less than 10,000 people. Those governments have less than 10,000 people in them.
That's right.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much for your.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times why we stick to Columbia, Muskogee, Athens, and Macon Bibb, because they're metropolitan areas, they have more people, and that's why a lot of times we focus on those, because they're more comparable to Augusta.
Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Backus?
I have a couple of questions, and first, I don't know if it would be for Dr. Facer. I know I had to leave the meeting a couple minutes early last time, so I don't know if I missed something, but the discussion of strong mayor and administrator versus city manager, should that not be happening in the subcommittee meeting? Because it kind of feels a little bit like, even though we haven't voted yet again, and it's on the agenda today to discuss again, the frequency, it feels like we're still getting it in, even though that's not what's on our, like it's supposed to be the Charter Review Committee today, and not the Form of Government Subcommittee. And then secondly, who decided to talk about strong mayor specifically, and are we next time gonna talk about commission-led with no mayor? You know what I mean? Like, are we, because this does seem a little bit biased in one direction versus another.
So I will claim responsibility for both. Rather than waiting to present it solely to the committee, I thought it was better for all of us to hear it at the same time. So I put both the topics on. We are going to have to do multiples because it's like drinking out of a fire hose. If we were to commingle things, there's some method to how we're devising this, and we've had some suggestions, and that's just what I decided to do. Next time, we've got on the 24th of July that the next form of government will be discussed.
But also, I do just want to point out that what happens in subcommittee still has to come back to this committee anyways. Right. So then we're going to talk about it multiple times for this one thing. So we're going to talk about strong mayor here and get that. And we've already talked about administrator versus city manager. So we're going to talk about it again, and then we're going to talk about it.
They're going to add to that. That was a separate agenda item on purpose. Consider it like a Carl Vinson presentation so that we all have a common area, common understanding from their perspective. On the 24th already, I have agendas for the next 6 meetings that will allow for a flow. And before the next form of government committee meets, you will have the next one dealing with strong commission, and then potentially in another discussion about administrator versus manager roles.
And that's for during this regular meeting and not the subcommittee meeting?
This whole committee has to be brought along, and then it gets parsed out in the subcommittee. In other words, we have to have a common understanding of what we're discussing before it goes to subcommittee. At least that is what I think is the respectful thing to do to everybody.
We all attend the subcommittee meeting anyways.
Yeah, but we don't know that that's going to go on in the future, so this is the only way to assure we all hear it at once. People have schedules and vacations and so forth. Was that it, Angela?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Wimberly.
Well, my concern is down the same line as Angela, as well as I want to talk about some of what we just said about administrative manager. Normally the job description of those two individuals are entirely different, isn't it?
Well, I will kind of refer to what Ms. Brill noted, that they aren't always fundamentally different. Now, in their kind of pure form, if you will, yes, they are different.
Okay.
And when we describe them, we describe that pure form.
We don't want to describe them now, but
Yes.
there's a language difference between the two.
Yes.
So why did we not just now discuss mayor, manager, mayor hiring the manager, manager hiring the department heads, and the commissioner having a consent to it? Why do we not go there? Because that's a form of government that is being discussed here in what was just sent out to us. So was that not an option, or we just want to focus on the strong mayor?
And we can discuss that. I was trying to get clarity on what folks would like to hear about.
Okay.
And so if that's something that we would like to talk some more about, I'm happy to do that.
I don't want to talk anymore about strong mayor. Because right now, what appearing here on the agenda is not first borne out in the committees. So when it appears here on the agenda, it's leading. It's telling the whole body what to think about. And that leads to coercion.
So again, I will defer to the chair on that decision, but I believe, as she said, that.
Well, I'm speaking so she can hear me.
They want to make sure that they cover those topics as well.
Right.
And the chair will respond to everybody. It doesn't matter which topic we put first, that would be guilty of. There is so much to understand about all of these agenda items today that we have to start somewhere. And that's just where we started. And nothing subterfuge about it. All right, can we please call Mr. Go ahead.
If I can make one just additional comment. Ms. Robinson has asked that we refrain from the terms strong mayor, weak mayor. I will note that is a term of art used across the country. Now, I'm happy for us to try and not to restrain ourselves from using that, but if we do slip into that, it's because that is the term of art that is commonly used. But that said, we will do our best to try and refrain from that term, to make sure we try and keep that playing field as level as possible.
Can I respond?
Thank you. I need to take them in order if I can? Okay, it is Mr. Lewis, I believe.
The terminology, we talking administrator and manager. And I think it's important to keep that distinguished because a manager is just simply run the business as opposed to administrator. And no, I'm sorry, manager. The manager controls the business, and administrator just runs the business. So there's more power with the administrator as opposed to the manager. As a manager than the administrator.
Yes, in these models, the manager does have greater responsibility and powers than does an administrator.
Thank you. All right, I have to apologize to my colleague, Mr. Brand, I believe is next.
Well, I think we need to stay focused on what we're trying to do. And Carl Vinson is here in a consulting role to help lead us and guide us as we go through what is a very difficult task. And to tell them to change terminology and things like that that are a part of their presentation, and as he just stated, is something that's used nationally. I think we don't need to spend time in the weeds worrying about that. I think we need to spend time in the weeds trying to figure out in what direction, after hearing various information about mayors and administrators and managers and so forth and so on, I think their job is to help inform us of what we're trying to do. So based on that, I would like us to try to stay focused on the presentation as given, and then in subcommittee, if you need to delve into that deeper and try to understand exactly what's happening, we consult and continue to consult with Carl Vinson, and maybe we have a better understanding, because it's very difficult in this format where we're just gathering information as a full committee, and that's why we have subcommittees. So if it takes a deeper dive, we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Mr. Coleman?
I'd just like to comment about the mayor, and I'm not going to call it a strong or weak mayor, but we've all known the history of Augusta Richmond County with the commissioners. For a long time, the mayor could only vote to break a tie. And I'm going to give you an example. Our administrator we presently have. How long did it take the commissioners to finally make a decision? Because it never could go to a tie. Nobody would let it go to a tie. They would abstain, walk out, and the 5 commissioners that wanted to keep the interim administrator, for how long did we have her? A year and a half or so? And it went to a referendum. The public voted on giving the mayor a vote. That way, we can do the people's business more efficiently instead of delaying things, and trying to control different departments and department heads. And I think in the future, we need to concentrate on checks and balances and make sure things like that don't ever happen again. And I'm a strong believer that the mayor has to have input, whether he sits up here or not, on votes. And the stuff that I've seen happen in this commission chamber for years did not do justice to the public. And I just want to make that comment and use that as an example that I believe in the mayor having more authority, along with the administrator, or whatever we decide to call her, over different department heads. And that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Ms. Robinson?
In response to a couple of things about the whole strong mayor versus weak mayor, as well as what Mr. Bryant talked about, I've been serving in this capacity since the end of May. And every single time we have a meeting, the conversation is about strong mayor. Everything is about the mayor, the mayor, the mayor. We even have people that sit here who have written in email that our job is to give the mayor more power. And for, as a citizen representing other citizens, to continue that line of conversation is disingenuous to the people. If the discussion is different forms of government, then we should discuss different forms of government, not just the mayor needs more power. That's all we keep hearing, the mayor this, the mayor that, strong mayor this, strong mayor that. I do not disagree that the issues with the commission are issues, but those issues are fixed with the charter. That doesn't necessarily mean the mayor needs to be given more power to do that. Whatever we come up with is what we come up with, but I am tired of listening to information about strong mayor. That is not the only form of government. That may not be the form of government that is necessary for us as a city. That isn't necessarily the form of government from the documents that are being presented to us. So if we're going to do this, the city's business, the business of the citizens, we have to be objective and stop having every meeting about strong mayor. So that's all I have to say on that.
No worries. Miss Robinson. I'm trainable, I promise. Would you go on to clarify a conversation we had that your objection on whatever we're going to call the mayor is what you made in the beginning when you started, that your objection is veto or vote, but not both, because that straddles two different forms of government?
Absolutely. If the mayor's going to sit on the council, then he shouldn't have a vote. He should potentially have veto. And it could be a very limited veto. It could be unlimited. Again, whatever we come up with based on the information we receive. Yes, I have my feelings on how things should go, but I'm just one citizen. So I'm going to go with what makes the most sense for all citizens. And if somebody convinces me otherwise of something, I'm willing to, jump on board with that, but I need to see data.
Yep.
I need to see process and
We're very early
procedure.
in the process, so I would encourage everybody to stay at 65,000 feet because, and for the benefit of everyone, we had to start someplace with one model. And it's going to, over the next 2 or 3 meetings, we're going to hear about other models. Each one deserves its own day and exploration and discussion like we're having. Okay, so Mr. Wimberly, I think you're up next.
I'm still full of concern. First, I was told to stay on topic, so we've been off topic on a couple of comments. If you're going to bring up changing the government and you're going to make a comparison, then don't make your comparison to a limited period of time. Go back to the history of the government completely. So if we just here to change this charter, let's stick to this charter and talk about what we want to change in the charter, not evaluate the commissioner itself. I agree with Mr. Bryant on how we should bring things up, but there are times people need clarity, and when they need clarity, they need to bring it up right then. You don't wait to get clarity. You get clarity right then. So, my thoughts.
All right, very good. All right, let's see. We have Mr. Coleman.
I agree with most of what I just heard up here, but I want to remind everybody that the voters, it was already on the ballot, and it's in place now. The mayor can vote every time. The people that we're trying to look out for voted for that. They got tired of deadlock on this government. They voted for the mayor to have a voting power, not just when it was a tie to be a tiebreaker.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fouché.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Coleman's made my point, my first point. 74% of the Augusta population voted for the mayor to have a vote. It goes in conflict with the will of the people to supersede that. I don't think we should even entertain a motion for it. Secondly, it's my understanding from the presentations Carl Vinson Institute has presented to date, it's the most effective form of government, the most popular form of government has been with a strong mayor. Is that not correct?
No.
To say that it's the most effective is not necessarily the case. And I think we will present some research findings that suggest that that manager forms have a likelihood of being more efficient and effective.
But it's the most popular form of
But
government.
it is the most popular, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Backus?
I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Coleman had said, and actually Mr. Fouché as well, and just remind everybody that when the voters voted for the mayor to have a vote, that was literally the only option given to them. We have all of these options to consider. They were given one choice, yes or no. But we have all of these different things to try and figure out what's going to work best for our community. And they have to vote on that too, so it will always still be the will of the people.
Mr. Wimberly, are you all done? Everybody's all set. Ms. Bonner, do we still need to break, or we're all set? All right. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Okay, how about before we move on to the next topic with questions, this is not going to be the last time we're going to have the opportunity to speak with questions. This was meant to be a common introduction for all of us. Similar things going to happen with other forms of government. Mr. Todd has been gracious enough to allow us to continue on with your presentations, and then after we finish that, we will let Mr. Todd make his comments.
So I'm not sure what you would like me to add on the administrator versus manager issues.
I think an overall description for the entire room would be in order.
Sure, sure. So the fundamental difference between manager forms and administrator forms comes down to the basic power. So in a manager form, the manager is the chief executive officer, and they control the budget. They make hiring and firing decisions about department heads. Now, whether it's the commission or the mayor and commission, whatever that structure is, they have the ability to remove that manager at their pleasure. The manager serves at the will and pleasure of the commission and mayor, or mayor if that's the model. The administrator, on the other hand, does not have those same powers. They can have some of those, but it is also much more common in an administrator model for the mayor to be the budget preparer, and for the department heads in a model where the mayor is the central executive, for the mayor to make the choices of the department heads. Now, in the administrator model, where the commission is a blend of executive and legislative, then they make the hiring decisions about department heads. And so the primary differentiation is the manager has more power and responsibility, and it goes around the budget, hiring and firing, and those kinds of managing the day-to-day operations. The administrator is often kind of managing the day-to-day operations, but with limited powers to make decisions about hiring and firing, limited decision input on the budget, et cetera. Try to see if there's, did I miss anything? One of the other things that's often a differentiator is in manager models, it is much more common for there to be an expectation that they are a trained professional. That's what I took the words right out of her pen, apparently. And so in the manager model, it is much more common for people to be expected to have a professional degree, such as a graduate degree in public administration or even business administration or something along those lines, where in the administrator model, that is, it can be the case, but it is not necessarily a formal requirement as it generally is under the manager model.
Very helpful.
And a lot of times those formal requirements that he was just talking about, the degree and the professional background, is put into the description.
Into the job description or into the charter?
Into the, whether it's in the charter or if it's in, you know, sometimes they just give general in the charter and they put the details in ordinances. But a lot of times it will say has to have at least this degree, at least for city managers. I mean, it doesn't do it necessarily for finance department or anything like that, but for city managers, it often does have that in there.
Very good. Would you both comment, this is my personal question because I get it 35 times a day, what safeguards does a charter committee have to prevent other portions of the governing body from interfering with the executives, the mayor and the administrator and/or manager?
So it fundamentally depends on how that charter language is laid out, but it is not uncommon for there to be clear articulation that the legislative body, the commission in this case, would be in charge of policy, and that the executive, whether that be a manager or whether that be a mayor, that they would be explicitly responsible for the executive role and function. Now, it becomes, if you have the commission with a manager and the mayor is part of the commission, then again, that would articulate that the mayor is part of the legislative body and the executive role is delineated by the manager.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
I would love it if you would bring clear language to the July 24th meeting. We'll put that on the agenda.
Okay.
That's going to be an important thing to be able to do. Examples of clear language.
Yeah, we can provide that, and we will be providing in the 24th subcommittee meeting much of the research that we've been reviewing on.
Excellent.
Performance.
Okay, so Ms. Robinson?
Yes. So is it common in the form of government where you have a city council manager, and I'm meaning manager, not administrator, that the mayor is part of the legislative branch? Is that common?
Yes, that is actually quite common. And in the historical model, that was the kind of original framing, was that the mayor, and it even, in some local governments, that the mayor actually rotates among the council members. And so the mayor isn't necessarily elected. Now, the mayor can be. That is much more common today to see the mayor actually be elected. But it's not uncommon, for example, in Gainesville, the mayor is kind of chosen among the members of the commission, and they really have that kind of figurehead role of representing the city in kind of public venues.
And my second question, in the models where there is a council manager, who is typically the head of the council since they don't have a mayor?
The council chooses.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Backus.
I just wanted to follow up on Marcy's question. I know she had asked about safeguards to prevent interference from the commission for doing the mayor and the administrator's jobs. But I think especially moving forward, as we're discussing each kind of government, if we could talk about the safeguards to prevent abuse, whether that's by the mayor and the administrator or the commission or whatever, I think one thing that our community needs is a reason to start trusting our government again. And so especially having those safeguards in place, I think Moses called them guardrails. So making sure that we are prepared, because especially in the political climate we're in right now, I think it does leave people concerned. So if we go with a strong mayor model and a city administrator, is it just going to be like a hostile takeover? You know what I mean? Like what what safeguards can we put in place to make sure that people stay within their roles, no matter what those roles are.
Okay, Mr. Wimberly.
Staying on the administrator and city manager, Muskogee, mayor, manager, commission.
Yes.
And the manager works for the mayor, correct?
The
Well, the
manager,
mayor just fired him, so he must have worked for the mayor.
the manager works for the commission, is my understanding, but we will double check that.
I think he worked for the mayor because the mayor just fired him, the one that they have. I believe that's the way it goes. Double check, please. So in the sense of a mayor having the authority to hire the manager, and I'm from a little small town. You just talked about strong mayors. My little town is 5,000. We got a city manager and a mayor. And we have a council. So the same thing, but it's not a consolidated government. But you have, here in Muskogee, you have a consolidated government. So which is the most common where you find that mayor and that administrator? Is that in those larger cities or those little rural towns?
Well, the answer is we see a little bit of both. We tend to see the largest of the cities, the Los Angeleses, the New Yorks.
I'm talking the state of Georgia.
Okay, well, yeah, but we'll get there. But in the largest cities, so the Atlantas, for example, we tend to see a mayor and an administrator. In small towns, we see a mixed model. Even when we have a mayor, we often see, city managers, but not in the smallest of towns, because the smallest of towns just don't feel like they have the resources to barely have a clerk, let alone to have a professional manager. And so where we tend to see managers most commonly is in that mid-sized 25,000 up, and then in those larger cities, it's a mixed bag on whether they have a manager or an administrator.
Thank you.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes, on the conversation of guardrails, when I did my analysis of all of the other charters, one thing that stuck out like blatantly across the other charters versus ours is an ethics committee or an ethics board that's comprised of the citizens. That is one thing I would like some additional research on, since we don't have anything of the sort in our current charter and every other charter does. Because I think that will help with some of the things we're talking about as far as abuse and accountability, and help put the trust back into the community. So that would be helpful if we can deep dive into ethics committees in future conversations.
We'll be happy to do that.
It was Mr. Wimberly that asked about the manager. It is what I thought it was. Usually when you have a manager, the mayor will put forth the person, but it always has to be voted on and approved by the council. And here, it's the same thing when you take them out. The mayor can recommend that they be removed, but it can't be removed without the council approving it. So, but that was answered your question? Or did you have another one?
Well, I knew that was pretty much the answer, but thank you for reminding everybody.
Oh, I thought you had said the mayor just did it. So I thought you had asked if that was true.
But I'm glad you reminded everybody else.
Oh, okay. And did you have another question about Columbus, Muskogee, or was that the only issue that came up? It wasn't really a question.
It really wasn't a question. It was more of a statement.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought I was
Well,
clarifying for you.
I'm glad you clarified.
I'm just trying here to help.
I believe that's it for questions. That would be wonderful if we could bring language, and I already had ethics on the July 24th, so we're thinking. I think we're good for Carl Vinson.
Yeah. Well, let me just double check on one thing. Did we hear back?
So
we have not heard back yet on the number of survey responses. we have a query in to Jeff.
Excellent.
on
He was
that.
expecting that, I just didn't get to it, so we can bring that back. All right, that's going to be just a raw number. Nobody's looking at what it says. It's under lock and key in Jeff Lewis's office. Mr. Todd, would you be kind enough to join us and render your public remarks? Thank you for your patience.
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, you know, I think that if I was giving Carl Vinson Institute a question on models of government in terms of speaking of guardrails, I would want to know which model have less corruption. Now, all governments have a percentage of corruption, waste, and abuse, but it would be which model have the least. So I'm going to get back to my comments for the committee. Madam Chairman, one of my questions is, are the committee and the chairman going to invite former commissioners or just the mayors? And
So it's a question back to you. We have roughly 50 commissioners that have served in the last 30 years. How do you decide who comes and who doesn't come?
That's easy. Put the names in a hat, shake it up, and pull them out. 4 mayors, 4 commissioners. Names in a hat, shake it up, pull them out.
As soon as Mr. Davis returns, we will, and there's a call into Mr. Sconyers too, just to be ecumenical about the whole thing. But we will take that up, but there are currently no plans to do that at this time.
Right. Well, I would think in the sense of fairness, you know, that need to happen, that you need to hear from commissioners. I kind of, you know, I co-founded the former commissioners organization with Commissioner Jerry Brigham, and sets every November in what Sylvia Cooper calls chew the fat with former commissioners. So I have a pretty good idea, you know, but I think, yes, so certainly I think that's important. For Carl Vinson, it would be the difference between the models of government of Muskogee, Athens Clarke, Macon Bibb, and DeKalb County, which is not a consolidated government. That those are the forms of government or the models that we've heard talked about a lot. So certainly I think that you may have already covered some of that in the sense that I was a few minutes, I had another obligation, was a few minutes late getting here. So the other issue is the discussion over at-large voting. And I would like to refer you to the Justice Department lawsuit against the city of Augusta, Georgia in 1987, and whether that settlement would prohibit going in the direction of at-large voting.
The timer has gone off. Can we request an opinion from Mr. Plunkett?
Madam Chairman, I think a couple things regarding the 1987 case is the first is I think it was decided or settled before I started practicing law, and considering how much gray hair I have, I think I am the oldest in this group. But we did try to find a copy of it last night. We contacted someone over at the federal courts, and we have not obtained a copy of that order. I did talk to the elections director today, and he also did not have a copy of the order. But basically, what you're looking at is whether or not. Well, let me preface it in this way. At one time, we used to have to have pre-clearance for elections. Okay, that has been eliminated because of things of that nature. The thing about this 1987, which by the does predate our Consolidation Act, is that the idea was to try whether or not to at-large voting would dilute minority voting. So one of the issues based on your demographic study that we had on like day 1 or day 2, possibly that at-large may be available. I understand from the elections what had happened is when we were going into consolidation that the school board had been pre-cleared to do on a district basis, and so that model was adopted, so there was no question about at-large versus this. From a practical matter, I think the thing that we need to think about in terms of at-large voting versus district members that are voted at large versus a district meeting is that and I'm going to speak to Carl Vinson, put them in the same idea with me, I think, although we haven't discussed this, is that we don't want to chill conversation. And the purpose of the subcommittee is to kind of think of things, and if we are going down a path of at-large voting, and it seems that's the thing, then we could start looking at that issue to see if it would require some type of potential judicial challenge. If everybody is comfortable with the model that we have, we really don't need to spend the time unnecessarily doing it. And what I mean by chilling is that, Ms. Robinson has raised the issue today. We have one model today or 2 models on there, and there's multiple models. So are we predetermining the way this path is going to go? So if I was to come in and say, oh, you can't do that, I think that the lawyer or the consultant is interjecting themselves too much at this point. I take great pleasure that Mr. Todd brought this issue up, because it is a major issue that Augusta has suffered. I did look at a case that was referenced in the Roethlisberger case with the PSC statewide voting, and it was also referenced in a fairly long law review article about basically election abuse in Augusta from the, I want to say it was from, I don't know, maybe 1800s to the 60s. So the settlement was fairly thing, but it basically said we do district voting. So very long answer, but if this body is heading toward that, we will do a bit deeper dive into the issues that you may be opening for the county at that juncture. And if it's the will of the body to get a little bit more depth at this juncture, we're happy to look at it. And if that would take y'all off a path, we'd be happy to do it. But it's not something that I readily look at as Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1964-65 very frequently, to be quite honest. I can say I probably haven't ever looked at that section. But we're more than happy to look at it and kind of give y'all what we're looking at different DOJs now and things of that nature. So what may have been prohibited in the 80s or may not be as considered a big as issue, but I'm happy to look into it if y'all would like a little bit more information, or we can just wait till y'all make a decision if that's even something that y'all want on the table.
Mr. Todd, I have questions for you, but not right now. So I'm going to take that up with you offline if we can about that very issue. I think it would be safe to say, Mr. Plunkett, that yes, we do want to take into account at large, how that applies to us, how it applied back during consolidation, perhaps your opinions that you've already solicited will answer these questions. But I think we do need to understand what the impacts are, pro, con, and otherwise. Is that about what everybody thinks?
Not at all.
Nope.
All right, so let's hear from, if you can just bear with me, let's go back to Ms. Robinson.
Considering what the data we have here, not a single government over 10,000 people has at-large voting, it doesn't make sense to go backwards in that retrospect. I completely agree with you, Mr. Todd, on the former commissioners, but I would also like to hear from former admins. Again, we have to do this objectively, which means we have to talk to everybody involved so we make the right decision. So the next charter can stand 30 years. So I would like to hear from former commissioners and admins. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Wimberly, you're next.
I was just listening to the attorney, and I really had created some concern because I think the attorney just gave you the leeway to make take a direction that might be supported by the current administration in DOJ. When he just said that.
Just information, Mr. Wimberly.
No, information is what start thinking, and so. And information can in fact reinforce thinking. And so that's what I was just picking up on what he said was based off at-large voting. What did the current law say? And then he just gave you a direction to challenge that if you want to go to at-large voting. Ms. Robinson just made a great point about the size of community that does not condone or take part in that large voting.
Understand.
And we will be in that size.
There's no objective, though. It is a reflection more of what I'm getting questions from in the public. Would Rex or Lori like to comment on the frequency of at-large voting, and that will help going into the public meeting tonight, too? At-large, maintaining the district so that the service levels, I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so the short part of the answer is we don't have a definitive answer.
Okay.
We do know it's more common in rural communities.
Okay.
That goes to the smaller governments Ms. Robinson referenced. But it is occasionally used elsewhere as well.
Okay. If I can just share with my brethren here, the questions I get from the public surround, they're concerned that we have all divided into 8 fiefdoms. They don't like that. They want Augusta to feel like we're all Augusta type thing, and that is just the basis. It's the opinions of people that have bothered to reach out. All right, I think we have Ms. Backus and then Mr. Bryant.
I'm not sure that I recall a committee member bringing up at-large voting. I think that was Mr. Copenhaver. So I don't recall anybody specifically supporting that here. But I do just want to point out, again, like I said in the subcommittee meeting a couple weeks ago, we wouldn't want a congressman from California representing our interests here. And I think our community is so diverse that the people living in National Hills, I've been to some of their neighborhood association meetings, they're concerned about the homeless population coming in their neighborhoods and tearing stuff up. But then you have people in South Augusta with a completely different concern with all of the pollution or their homes flooding with sewage every time it rains hard. So you need to have somebody who lives in that, who's in the trenches with them, and at-large voting just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know that we really need to continue.
I heard this from a former city attorney. He's one of about 6 people that have contacted me on this very issue. The question is, and it makes more sense to maintain the district so that you assure the service levels given to the existing districts, but that they run citywide the way the old city used to run. It's just a request for information on that count.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to have my seat, if I may, comment or respond to the attorney, which I respect his opinion, and certainly I'm not, giving legal opinions or trying to practice law here. But I think the difference is the 1987 settlement is seller law, where the judiciary or the attorney generals would be an opinion until that seller law is overruled by the U.S. Supreme Court. I think it would probably stand. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bryant.
It just seems to me that we need to continue to gather information. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the survey asked that question about district voting. And I think we will get some feedback for the survey. I also think we will get some feedback from discussion at our town halls. And so I would see where that takes us. To Mr. Todd's point about drawing 4 commissioners out of a hat of 50, that ain't gonna be popular at all. But I would say, as an alternative, as we try to gain input around, is maybe ask or give the opportunity to former commissioners to provide this committee with a 150-page, no more than a 150-word synopsis of what they think. And that way, it would give all of us an opportunity to hear various viewpoints from the various commissioners without them feeling like they have to come here and spend, 30 minutes talking about their time, because it could be so very different for each commissioner, as it would be very different for each administrator, or very different for each department head. So if the commission wants to be involved, or former commissioners want to be involved in the process, I think there's a way that we might give them an opportunity to do so. And I got enough reading to do, but that's a part of the job. So I wouldn't mind hearing from them and reading what they had to say, but not in a 10-page dossier versus a 150-word, to the point, bullet by bullet of what they think and would suggest.
Thank you. Excellent suggestion. Okay, Ms. Robinson.
One thing we have to be conscious of when we reference Augusta, I hear a lot of talk about, well, this is what happened. This is what happened in 87. This is what happened in 96. I was around when when the government was consolidated, and if I'm correct, the city of Augusta had about 70,000 people, and then unincorporated was maybe another 80 or so. We are bigger than that now. We also exist in the digital age. We also exist in an area where we are no longer the largest city in our metro area. Aiken is not that far in size to us. Columbia County has grown. All of the counties around us are growing. And we are being left on the wayside in a lot of that. And part of it is because our thinking is still stuck in 87 and 96. It's 2025. We have to update everything. So I would like us as a body to be very conscious of where we are now and how we can improve where we are now versus, well, this was done this way because of back then. Back then was forever ago. I have the gray hairs to prove it. Let's move on. So that's just my comment there. We have to be more forward thinking about the generation that will come behind this body, not where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent comments all. Mr. Plunkett, you wanted to comment here.
If I may, and this is to Mr. Wimberly and Ms. Backus, my recollection is that there was a gentleman on the committee raised the issue of having districts and at-large, and he was ruled out of order at that point in time. And that was simply why I said the issue of at-large voting was raised. And as to Mr. Wimberly, I was not trying to suggest anything in any way. What I was trying to say is that I try to be silent as to issues until y'all raise it, similar, so that if there's something that y'all want to discuss, that I do not impede y'all's discussion. So if I inferred, if you took my statement as an inference that I was trying to suggest some action, I apologize for that inference.
Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Dr. Facer.
Yes, we have heard back from IT.
Wonderful.
There have been 835 responses as of this morning, which is fantastic for it being out such a short time. So now we don't have any of the data analyzed, obviously, but that's a great start.
Amen. Thank you very much. Excellent. All right, that takes care of that section of the agenda then. Next on the list was a motion to rescind the frequency, order, and time of the CRC subcommittees. There is a discussion to be had about that. Ms. Backus, you want to lead off?
I would love to. I also do have
Madam
some.
Chair, there's no motion on the floor
For,
to rescind. It was last week that we announced that it would be discussed. You'd be more appropriate to have a motion and a second and then go into your discussion with Ms. Backus.
thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please vote.
Madam Chair,
We're going to discuss first.
No,
okay.
no discussion.
Very good. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I need you to announce who made the motion, who made the second, so that we can.
So, Ms. Robinson made the motion, Ms. Barnhill Turnley seconded it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So I did just want, and he's passing out, I have some attachments for you guys. The first page is only relevant to this one. And Ms. Bonner, I do have copies as well right here. So we did send out an email after several other emails and asked members to state pros, cons, and other options. So I just wanted to read those into the record real quick. Pros for changing it to both subcommittees being held the same day. One pro is subcommittee chairs feel that every other meeting isn't often enough, and there is no confusion over which meeting is being held on which day. The cons would be time requirement may limit those committee members and citizens from participating. It may discourage citizens from joining the meetings and participating in the process because of the long schedules. And after our June 12th meeting with the current schedule already voted in, Carl Vinson Institute did state that we are still on track at the rate that we are going right now. Also, another con would be subcommittees may feel rushed to finish if there's another meeting afterwards or if there's been a long day. And then an alternative solution would be to suspend the Finance Committee subcommittee for right now until after the Form of Government subcommittee has concluded. So the very first page, and I've brought this up in our meetings and in emails, and I just wanted to make sure I brought the legal terms because it was mentioned that maybe I should quit the committee because I can't physically sit for 7 hours and I am disabled. I do just want to point out, this isn't even about creating an accessible and inclusive environment because you guys are wanting to make a change. When I started on this committee, we were at 2-hour meetings. Now we've moved up to a 5-hour commitment. And now you guys want to move it up to a 7-hour commitment. That's a very big difference. So you guys are changing the criteria, which makes me and possibly other people that are participating both on this committee as well as the public unable to participate. And simply saying, well, this is a voluntary committee and you can quit like the other ones have is not sufficient at all. And I very rarely call my disability out like that, and I don't even feel like I should have had to. I shouldn't have to explain that. But physically, I cannot sit for 7 hours, and physically, I will not. It is not okay for us to change this and go against what we've already voted on. It's literally being brought up by the same people who made the motion and seconded it. 10 of us already agreed on this. And again, I have the printed out email where I asked everybody, all of y'all were CC'd on this email. This was sent out June 26th, and Ms. Robinson was the only one who responded and added anything to the list of pros and cons.
Okay, I think Ms. Robinson is next.
Yes. So I wanted to give further clarity in my suggestion to suspend the Finance Committee, since the form of government that we choose could potentially change what the Finance Committee would do. I thought that to be a good opportunity to kind of solve the issue with timing, give us the focus to spend on form of government so that we have a clear path of direction. That would also give the Finance Committee the ability to have a direction to start from versus we go with one thing and then that changes what they do later. That will help with the meeting times. That will help people to be involved and engaged. My idea was to suspend finance until September and then by then we will have all the data we have back from our form of government survey. And then at that time, we could potentially do a finance survey as well. Then run finance from September to October and go back and forth that way so that each committee has a significant amount of time enough to spend on their item versus if we're doing both committees in one day. I do agree that one committee may feel rushed over another, and we don't want to rush this process at all. So that was my thoughts around suspending the one committee for now.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Powell is next.
Like thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like a opinion from the legal, please.
As to what issue meant, sir?
The ADA requirements. I know the building is ADA compliant, and I appreciate Ms. Backus bringing this up, and I'd like to know how it would affect our meetings, the ADA compliance that she has brought up. I'm not sure, from certainly not legal in my experience, but I'd like to know if we are in violation of ADA requirements by having these meetings the way we're having them at this point.
Mr. Powell, most of my involvement with ADA is relative to the workplace, and this is a voluntary act. Obviously, the building itself is ADA compliant. I did not hear Ms. Backus saying that she was saying that we were infringing on any type of right. I think she was raising the issue of her personal situation as it's difficult to go for an extended period of time. I think I certainly could look into it. One of our lawyers on our law department has had some multiple years of experience in terms of employment and ADA related issues. Obviously there'd be accommodation issues, and if it was in a workplace, and I think in that situation, and it may be that it's detrimental to the time frame, but it may be that this body needs to, if we go back to back, would be having more breaks, an extended break between times, so that, and I'm certainly not going to inquire, but I don't know the nature of Ms. Backus's limitations, but if it was, someone had sciatic issues, for instance, we may have to have a break that somebody can walk for 15 minutes to get that released or something like that. I can come back with a better answer for you relative to the voluntary nature of a body and ADA compliance. But again, my experience has been in the workplace, and we could have something, possibly, certainly we can have it by the next meeting. I'm not sure if we'd have something later on this day. I'm hesitant to put Ms. McLean on the spot, but do you have any, have you ever experienced, Ms. McLean has some, she did approximately 25 years of employment work, and so, but I think her work has also been in the workplace, so I think this is a little bit nuanced that we're kind of a little out of sorts on, but we'd be happy to look into it. Okay, we'll confer and then and be in touch.
Thank you. Ms. Backus, my understanding was that it was food, rest, how long of a chunk a day we're taking. Is that right?
Actually, so on the handout that I handed to you, it says at the very bottom, the very last sentence, the ADA stresses providing effective communication, considering the nature, length, complexity and context of communication. So you do have to consider the length of time as well. And then the second bullet point up towards the top, make reasonable modifications to policies, practices, and procedures. I'm not even asking you to make a modification. I'm asking you not to, which would cause an undue burden, not just on me, but potentially on our community members as well who attend. And I don't know everybody else's stuff up here. Sheffy, I know, had commented last time she didn't even get to eat lunch, and the suggestion, I mean, you brought up breaks, but the suggestion that was brought to her in response to that was bring a bag lunch. You know, so I guess my question to the people that are pushing this is, why is it necessary? Why is it where she should have to skip lunch or she should have to bring it with her and I should have to sit here for 7 hours and physically hurt myself? Why is it necessary for us to even have to look at the ADA requirements just because, like, what is the point in having 2 subcommittee meetings on the same day after we've already discussed it? This is the 3rd time now, and agreed.
And the answer to that is we have Carl Vinson in town. Instead of making them drive 200 miles, take advantage of their expertise here.
But
And
again,
that's why we voted to do that.
June 12th.
So also, I don't know where we're getting 7 hours from. This meeting going to wrap up in the next 30 minutes, so 2 hours. The subcommittees, if we get into the cycle, are going to be about an hour apiece.
So actually, when Tanya discussed the schedule with me, she said it would be from 1 to 5 for the subcommittees. So that is going from 10 o'clock until 5 p.m. each time. And again, after we discussed this at the June 12th meeting, and we voted on this, we came to a conclusion. The question was asked at Carl Vinson Institute if we were still with 1 subcommittee per meeting, if we were still on track, and they said yes. So alternating has not caused us to get behind at all. Again, we're gonna cause undue burdens on everybody involved, and we're still not getting to the point of why is it necessary?
Madam Chairman, for a point of clarification, what I said, Ms. Backos, was that I personally was ready to commit to 5 o'clock. That's my own personal recommendation. That's what I'm willing to commit. I did not ask or infer that anyone else was willing or wanted to do that. That's how much time I was personally willing to invest in one day to get this done. I cannot comment on anyone's health. I wish your health was better, as I'm sure you wish your health was better. But if I'm willing to, that's my own personal commitment to stay till 5. If it takes that long for me, that's okay. If it doesn't, that's okay too. That's my personal commitment. My personal wishes I cannot and will not enforce on anyone else. If that's what you thought you heard, then you heard incorrectly.
Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't hear incorrectly. I have a really good memory.
Let's stay in order here. Let's stay in order, please.
I'm sorry, you didn't call her to talk just then, but she went on ahead and talked.
No, she moved and I instructed her to go. But let's just lower the temperature here and have this discussion.
Madam Chair, let's do that. I'm not willing to go back and forth about a small thing. If we're gonna vote on this, then let's vote on this. If not, let's continue discussion or let's move on. Let's make something happen. If we want to get out of here, you said within the next 30 minutes.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Powell.
Okay, for second part of that motion for suspending, having to be the chair of the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee, I haven't met in a month. Going on right now in the local government is 2 very important things. One is SPLOST 9, happens every 4 years. So we're putting it off a month already, up until today, talking about that. The budget process, which happens to be going on right now for Augusta, Richmond County, is going on at this particular time also. My next meeting, hopefully, will be in 2 weeks. I have asked the gentleman who is the interim head of finance to come and visit with us and give us an overview, not a 2-hour overview, but a quick and dirty overview of the budget process so that we can pass that on to the general public. But to suspend
our finance subcommittee until September, the budget process is going to be 99% over, and the SPLOST 9 business trying to cut down $425 million to a manageable level after cutting it down to almost $1 billion, then I think the general public needs to have more information going on about what these processes are, how they work, and where we are in those processes. The administrator made a wonderful presentation on SPLOST 9 and cut it down to $425 million, but that's a 7-year SPLOST. And what we're going to try to do, or what the administration is trying to do, is get the package that the general public will vote for to continue the 1 cent SPLOST tax right now to improve Augusta, Richmond County. I don't think that the general public should be, their information on these two processes should be reduced by one subcommittee taking preference over the other. That is my comment.
Okay. Mr. Wimberly.
I guess I'm a little confused because I respect the Finance Committee wanting to know what's going on with the current government, but is the Finance Committee supposed to be influencing the current government? That's one question. Mm-hmm. The next one is based off the meeting. My opinion is that actually we did this at an elementary level. Meetings are supposed to be time certain, and every other week is not time certain. If you say we're gonna meet every other Thursday, that's not time certain. Why? Because there's 5 Thursdays in a month.
Mr. Wimberly?
No.
You have brought that up 3 or 4 different meetings now.
No, I have not.
You have.
I have not.
Sir, you have.
Go back to the minutes and find them for me.
They won't be in the minutes because we didn't take action on them, but you
bringing
resurrect
it
this
up now
issue
because
every meeting. The chair is going to ask
As
you
a
to move
motion
on.
as a motion on the table.
We're going to handle
and
it.
I'm speaking on that motion.
You're
You're
meeting
not
on
supposed
changing
to
the
interrupt
dates.
me while
Yeah.
I'm speaking on the motion. Okay.
All right. Chair is
So
going
here
to
we go.
acknowledge Ms. Robinson.
Madam Chair, I'm
Mr.
speaking on the
Wimberly.
motion.
Ms. Robinson.
I want to make sure we clarify the motion because we've talked about several things and I don't want that to get convoluted. The motion is to rescind the frequency and order and time of the CRC committee meetings. Currently, they are to be held every other, each committee is every other meeting. The idea to rescind is so that it can then be put into motion that we have both committees on each day. I just want to make sure that's clear on what is attempted here so that folks know what we're voting on. We're voting on to rescind because there wants to be another motion to having both committees on both days. After that point of clarity, thank you, Mr. Lee, for your information. That makes perfect sense. Again, I only made the suggestion as a trying to stopgap for things, but I agree in with your comments on making sure the committee is maintained a little more swiftly. Not saying I necessarily agree with the motion, but I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Backus.
If I can just suggest, and it's been mentioned, 35 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. I do actually remember 2 hours per meeting. Why not just make better use of your time? So, Mr. Fouché, you said your first meeting was only 35 minutes long. You wouldn't anticipate it being as long as the last meeting. But why not just use up your 2 hours while you're in there instead of needing to meet more frequently so that it is more accommodating for everybody? I don't understand why everybody has to change everything and it is causing an undue burden when there's already a system in place that could work if you used an effective use of your time.
Chair acknowledges Mr. Bryant.
Madam Chair, I would call for the question.
Very good. Please, are we all clear on what the motion is? And let's take the vote. Cast your vote, please.
Madam Chair, you have to vote to call for the question first,
Okay,
and then you can vote to rescind.
please cast your votes on the fact that we're terminating discussion, moving on to a vote.
Ms. Wilhelmy?
Agree?
Ms. Turnley?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson? Mr. Bryant?
Okay. As soon as the-
That motion carries with Ms. Bacchus voting no.
Okay, now we go to the motion to rescind the frequency, order, and time of the CRC subcommittees. Is there a motion to that effect on the table already? There is, I believe.
I'll make the motion.
It's on the table. We have it. We have a motion.
The motion's pending.
Okay.
Would you like me to reread it again?
Please.
The motion is to rescind the frequency, order, and time of the CRC committee meetings so that a motion can be placed later to change from having the meetings every other meeting to having both committees at each meeting.
Any additional discussion on this?
Sorry, would you repeat that?
The motion is to rescind the frequency, order, and time of current CRC subcommittee meetings, which are currently slated to having every other meeting for each subcommittee, so that a motion can be placed to have both committee meetings on every meeting time. So we have to rescind first to make another motion, essentially.
That's correct. If there is no further discussion, please cast your votes.
Ms. Wilhelmy?
Yes.
Ms. Turnley?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
With Ms. Robinson voting no, Ms. Bacchus voting no, Mr. Lewis voting no.
So now that we have no subcommittees, is there a motion to schedule meetings and at what frequency and at what time?
I'd like to make a motion that both subcommittees meet in the same days with the regular committee meeting and at 1:30 p.m. rather than 1 o'clock.
Is there a second?
Let me understand one thing. Were the meetings consecutive? Were they being held at the same time?
They would be consecutive.
One following the other. Okay, there's a motion from Mr. Powell. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fouché seconds. Any further discussion? If not, please cast your votes. Lena, are you able to restate that motion, or Mr. Powell, can you restate that?
Ask Mr. Powell too.
You're checking to see if I'm awake. The motion is that both subcommittees meet as a full committee meeting, but starting at 1:30 p.m. and one subcommittee will meet after the
So, okay, so we're saying, well, we're going back to where we were originally, having the committees after the regular meeting consecutively, opposed to concurrently. Is that what you're saying? Thank you.
Madam Chair, if it would be the will of the body, if the motion passes, could you go ahead and designate which committee will meet first? And then, just for also the clerk's benefit, could we also schedule the second committee to begin at 1:35? but it will resume after the 1:30 meeting concludes. But that way that if we won't be just sitting there forever, waiting if there's not a quorum, and also we'll know who meets first, so that we won't have to go through that exercise.
Could I add to the motion that form of government meets first?
Okay. Ms. Bonner had a question first.
I'm good.
Okay. And then Ms. Pulliam. Pardon me, Ms. Backos.
Mr. Powell, I did have a question for clarity. Why would you suggest changing it from 1 to 1:30? So, and I just want to clarify, so we're willing to make accommodations so everybody can eat lunch?
Well, that might give
but
committee
not
members an
make
opportunity
accommodations
for lunch.
for people that can't sit in meetings for the entire day?
I'm sorry,
I just wanted to make sure that we were stating that clearly. We're switching it from 1 to 1:30 and extending the day even longer so that we can accommodate those people that want to eat lunch, but we're going to make the day longer, which again causes a further undue burden on the people that can't physically sit here all day.
Again, I think that the subcommittee's job is to present information to the general public. And Ms. Backhouse, I certainly am with you on your issues with having to stay so long in these meetings. I understand, and you have my sympathy, and I will certainly do everything I can to help you in that area. But I think that the overriding issue is that we are here to provide information to the general public. And I think that having these subcommittees meet more often, once a month, is just not going to appease the general public. I think when you go to this meeting tonight in front of the general public, the first thing they're going to tell you is you've been sitting up here and you have not done a single thing. And I think that it's time that we moved on down the road and got some things started. And I don't think that from the Finance Committee point, meeting once a month is going to give the general public, for which we basically are here to support, information that they need to have. And I certainly appreciate your position, Ms. Backos, and that's what I think that we need to do is get on down the road, have the information available to the general public a little quicker than we certainly have been giving it lately.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Mr. Bryant.
I don't know if we can mandate this. Is that I would hope that our subcommittee chairs would realize that it behooves us to try to hold these meetings to 1 hour. And if we do that, that will allow us to have time to do our business, but set the agenda so it will be just 1 hour. In my first meeting last week, because I missed the first one, but my first meeting at our last meeting, is that I thought it was prolonged because of the fact we had too much going on and open it up for an open forum, kind of like what we're going to have tonight. It's not an open forum. You have a subcommittee chair, you have members of this body as members of the subcommittee, and plus the fact that these are all videoed and online, so if I as a member decide that I want to view or see another subcommittee, I don't have to physically be there in the building. And so I think there's a number of things we can do, but I would like for us to be able to get our business done and handled as efficiently as we possibly can. And that puts pressure on our subcommittee chairs of making sure that we are concise and to the point and stick to the issues as they are and stay away from open forum formats.
Thank you all. Ms. Sheffy, Ms. Robinson, pardon me.
Yes, I would like the motion to be updated to mandate 1 hour per subcommittee, so that we have that built into what we're doing, and that puts the onus on each committee to be efficient.
Okay, Mr. Fouché.
Madam Chair, I think the nature of that would be a substitute motion. And then if I may confirm, it was not to exceed 1 hour. I think you said that
Correct.
each meeting would be 1 hour.
Not
So
to
I
exceed
wanna-
1 hour. Thank you. I
I
appreciate
think it'd be
that.
a substitute motion to modify that.
So I make a substitute motion to modify the current motion that subcommittee meetings be limited to 1 hour.
That requires a second? Second. Okay. Mr. Fouché. Don't have you on there, all right. Very good. Mr. Wimberly.
Okay, we're finna vote on the substitute motion first, I know that. But on the original motion, is you amending your motion, Mr. Powell?
I'm sorry.
Did you amend your motion?
To add the two subcommittees back to back, 5 minutes apart. When one finished, 5 minutes later, the other one started. Yes, two subcommittees to meet. Once the first subcommittee meeting is over, the second subcommittee meeting would start 5 minutes later.
Did you also make mention as to which one go first?
I did say,
Are you going to include that in your motion? Are you going to include that in the amendment of your motion?
yes,
He did.
Did it? Okay. I wasn't sure. I never heard the word amend. But go ahead, call for the vote.
All right, Mr. Plunkett, advise on which motion we're voting on first, please.
You would be voting on the substitute motion first, which is Mr. Powell's motion, except for the meetings would be limited to 1 hour, if that's for me to summarize it.
So that is the first motion. Does everybody understand which one we're voting on here? Okay. Go ahead and cast your votes then. Sir?
Madam Chair,
Pardon me, Rod.
just want to have something. Want to add this, with all due respect, when we're in these subcommittee meetings, we must respect the chair. Because if you're cutting back on the time, then, if we have one or two people monopolizing the time, then that's an issue.
That's correct. I
And
believe
sometimes it gives the appearance of being intentional.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe also that the commission, if I'm not mistaken, limits it to 2 volleys. You don't get to jump in 5 times kind of thing, but, all right, let us cast our vote on the substitute motion that Mr. Powell offered.
Ms. Robinson. Ms. Robinson.
Ms. Robinson's first, pardon me.
For clarity, the substitute motion is to limit the time frame for subcommittee meetings to 1 hour per committee. No longer than 1 hour. Thank you.
Ms. Wilhelmy?
I'm voting no on that.
Ms. Turnley?
No.
Mr. Bryant?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
No.
That motion carries with Ms. Robinson voting yes, Ms. Bakers voting yes, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Wembley, Mr. Bryant voting yes. That's 6, right? Is that 6? Mr. Wembley, Mr. Lewis, Ms. Bakers, Ms. Robinson, and Mr. Bryant. Is that 5? It's 5, I'm sorry. That fails.
Okay. Now we come back to the main motion. It failed.
It failed. It's 5. It's 5.
So Mr. Powell, it's
Main motion is up now.
the main motion, which we can read one more time because you've altered it to say 130 and consecutively.
Correct.
Form of government going first. Okay, Mr. Lewis, did you have a question then? No? Okay. All right, please cast your votes.
Ms. Wilhelmy,
Yes.
Ms. Turnley,
Yes.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
Okay. That motion carries with Ms. Robinson, Ms. Bakos, and Mr. Wembley voting no.
Thank you. The next agenda item is a motion to require a 2/3 majority vote to pass recommendations of changes to the charter. Nina is done, okay.
Madam Chair, you would still need a motion and a second to begin the debate.
I motion that the changes to the charter, or recommendations rather to the charter, require a 2/3 majority vote based on information provided from the Georgia State Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution.
Madam Chair, second.
Okay, so it was Ms. Robinson moving, Mr. Lewis seconding. And now we move to debate. All right, so we have Ms. Backus first.
So I did bring in, I know we discussed this back in April, I believe it was April. And when I had suggested that we go with 8 votes, which would be 2/3 according to Robert's Rules of Order, I was told that one of the things that people were concerned about is, like our charter says, in order to make a change, it requires a 2/3 vote, and we aren't making a change. We are suggesting a change, which will go on to the ballot. I was playing on Robert's Rules of Order about a week ago on their website, and it was very interesting. Right at the bottom, it had this part of the Constitution for the U.S. government on there, where it says, in order for the U.S. government to propose a change in Congress, they're not making a change, they're proposing a change, which still has to go onto a ballot. It does require a 2/3 vote. So then I was kind of curious, and I looked up the Georgia Constitution, and it works the exact same way. I think the importance with this is it is so much easier to get 6 votes than it is to get 8. 8 means that we actually have to listen to each other and negotiate and not have our heels dug into the sand and maybe consider other options and what's best for our community. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. I also very strongly think that 8 votes, once it goes to the legislature and once it goes to the voters, is more likely to be passed by the voters without question, because 8 votes offers legitimacy to this committee. It, like I said, it says that we had to work together. We had to negotiate. We had to meet in the middle at some point. 6 votes, I mean, really, I'm not, it doesn't really matter what I would have brought in on the last vote, because y'all have your 6 votes and you can basically control whatever is happening up here. And isn't that part of the concern that we've been bringing up about the commission doing the same thing? But ultimately, I feel like that's what can happen here. And whatever we are proposing to change in the charter, I think should require a 2/3 vote, which again, according to Robert's Rule of Order, would be 8.
Okay. Mr. Coleman?
As a committee member, I think this is what, the 3rd or 4th time we're voting on this again? And I just don't understand how come it keeps getting brought up over and over again. We've already voted on this and decided to go by the parameters that we're presently going under. And I honestly see this as a delay tactic to slow down this committee And each one of us were appointed by a commissioner. And I do believe there's some influence coming in from the outside to continuously put this on the agenda. And it's just depressing. And we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing moving forward.
Early on, this committee, we decided to operate generally as the commission operates. The commission operates on 6 votes to pass anything. And I understand our recommendations to the legislature are important, very important to the city of Augusta and to the future people who are going to be populating this city. The commission makes extremely important decisions every time they meet. Millions of dollars is spent. A lot of different things are brought up to commission, all are approved by 6 votes. That's what we voted on early on, to follow the way the commission works as closely as we can. And so the commission does not use a supermajority to pass anything except possibly terminating people. And I think that this commission, since we did vote to follow the, as closely as possible, the way the commission operates, that we should stay with that. Thank you.
Ms. Backus?
Hold on. I was next, actually.
No, I'm next and now.
Okay.
So I just want to follow up on the commission votes. They do vote for 6, and I'm not asking for 6 to change for our regular stuff, like even the subcommittee schedule. It would still remain 6. But our charter also says to make a change to the charter, it requires a 2/3 majority. And that's what the commission has to go through, is a 2/3 majority. And so, like I said before, the argument was, we are proposing a change, we're not making one. But the U.S. government and the Georgia government, both of those constitutions state the same thing, because they understand the importance of making people work together to get to that 2/3 majority. As far as the delay tactic, I do want to address that real quick. This is the second time that we have addressed this. The 4 times that we've addressed something in this committee was actually about the subcommittee schedule, not this. This was discussed once, and like I said, I had no intention of bringing it up, and then I saw that on Robert's Rules of Order, and I was like, oh, well, this is what they said was their hang-up, so let me show them this, and maybe they'll actually consider it. I don't know, but I figured, I mean, I have the documentation. You can look it up yourself. I didn't make up the Constitution. It does actually require a 2/3 vote to propose a change to the Constitution for either the U.S. government or the Georgia government. And then it is ratified by the voters, the same thing that we are looking to do.
Ms. Robinson?
We have to be conscious that something as important as our city's constitution should have a supermajority agreeing. We are here representing different districts. We are here representing ourselves as citizens, and the citizens that are leaning on us to do this the right way. We should lean on the best practices that are already available. We already, as a body, made a mistake in changing how committees work, only to have to revisit it again. We have multiple examples in front of us of how process and procedures should work. I don't know why we are hell-bent on going against that. The 2/3 vote isn't for just procedural things within this body. It was for changes and suggestions, rather, to the charter. That is the only instance in which the 2/3 majority should apply. So I would hope that the members of this body understand the difference between the two and denote that as being part of the procedure for the changes, not that this quote unquote delay tactic for any of our other procedural things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner, did you have something you needed to say? No? Okay. Very good. Ms. Barnhill?
Madam Chair, just listening to basically both ends of the dais, and maybe I'm the only one that's somewhat hopeful about all of this because we're discussing things. So that means we're doing exactly what our forefathers who put together the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence wanted us to do. So I think all of this is healthy. I just don't know what happens after this vote is taken, but I think even having the conversation is very constructive. I don't know if anyone else sees it that way, but getting things done like this charter is hard work, and I'm sure no one here thought it was going to be easy. I don't know if anybody thought it was going to be this difficult at the beginning, but guess what? This is the plate that we've got. So I'm thinking that all this conversation is really good, even though it seems like there are factions here and factions there, but at least people are engaging in the process. So for me, more than anything, I am hopeful about that. That's all I got to say.
All right. Thank you all. If there are no other comments, any questions on what the motion is we're voting on?
I can restate.
Did we actually state the motion?
I did.
Okay.
I'll restate the motion.
Thank you.
The motion is to require a 2/3 majority vote to pass recommendation changes to the charter, not to be confused with procedural changes for the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Please cast your votes.
Ms. Wilhelmy,
No.
Ms. Turnley? No. Mr. Bryant? No. Mr. Pearson? No. Mr. Lewis? That motion carries with Mr. Powell, Mr. Coleman, and Mr. Fouché voting no. Fails. Okay. Okay.
All right. We have a couple, not much more, but I just wanted to check to see if anybody needed a 5-minute rest break. All right. Let us take a 5-minute rest break so everybody has the opportunity. All right, we're just gonna call this back. We got the quorum here. Everybody, please take your seats. We're missing one member, but he'll be back shortly. The next motion on, or the next agenda item is number 7. Good job. Number 7, there was a request for discussion on absentee voting. Mr. Fouché?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I personally think it's very important for discussion to take place before voting should occur, and everyone should be present for that discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Backus?
So just a few minutes ago, we talked about, I think Mr. Powell was the one that mentioned that we try and follow closely to what the commission does. Mr. Plunkett, can you verify again, does the commission allow absentee voting?
The commission follows state law, which requires that there be a quorum of the body present and that a member can vote up to, I believe it's twice a year. They have to be outside of the jurisdiction of the county. And the one exclusion, though, is that if there is medical reasons, then supported by appropriate documentation, the person can then vote remotely in that regard or participate remotely.
Mr. Plunkett, can you also verify, since the last vote that just went through was form of government subcommittee followed by finance subcommittee, so if I'm on the finance subcommittee and I am not able to sit through the meeting, then I have no vote under the current guidelines. I have no vote on that committee at all?
Well, I think there's two different points. As we said, I think someone said earlier today, all matters of the subcommittees go to the full commission for a full committee. I apologize, I call it commission sometimes, in that regard. The secondary part is that if you were unavailable to participate in a committee meeting and you were absent from the body, you could participate that way. Or if, because of your disability, if your physician provided documentation that said that you cannot participate, you would then be able to essentially dial in.
But under the current policy, I don't have the ability to dial in, correct?
It's my understanding that we're working under the same state law issue that would allow you to.
So do we even need to make a motion at all about adding in call-in voting? Or, because I thought our bylaws stated that it was not permitted.
And I apologize, I did not see this as an agenda item today, so I did not review the bylaws to that, but I will look very quickly to see if we can find that. I would reference you to Article 5, Section 4. It refers to there's no proxy voting, but does provide that a person could be allowed to vote by web or telephone as authorized by appropriate law or these bylaws, which I think would again go to the state law that says if you're unable to vote because of health-related issues and cannot be present, or alternatively, that you are outside of the jurisdiction of Richmond County, then you could vote in that regard.
Okay.
And that would be, again, twice a year in that regard.
And I did ask you last time if you could find that in our charter, but apparently it's state law. Would you be able to send that to us?
Be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item, number 8, is public hearings. Did we want to share or would you rather pass on that we were going to share what we're planning on rolling out for the public hearing tonight? We could, it would just take time. Up to the body. Do you want to see the slides we're going to use tonight? We've already seen them. All right, very good. All right, then we'll hold off on that in the interest of getting to lunch, or getting something anyway. Quick question for you. The format, the rules are going to work like this. There's going to be a lectern brought right here with a microphone on it. Ms. Bonner is going to utilize the same form that we use in other public hearings, evidently, where people sign in, contact information if they expect to address the body. Believe as many of us are going to show up will be here. We are going to limit it on the advice of Carl Vinson in the interest of getting as many bodies as we can cram into 2 hours. Give them the opportunity to speak if they're taking the time to come out during a dinner hour to speak to us. We'll limit it to 1 question, and the only real decision we have to make is, do you want to allow 2 minutes or 3 minutes per question? What are the thoughts? Okay. Ms. Turnhill?
Madam Chair, I'd like to give them a max of 3 minutes. That's enough time for them to actually set up the question, then ask the question. Then after that, they need to turn around and leave. I don't think they should be allowed to ask another question. Like, I have one more question and one more question and one more question. So that one person could typically take up the whole time and no one else gets a chance to ask their questions or get their concerns addressed.
All right. Any other comments on that? So if those rules are acceptable, there. All right. Very good. Comments are open right up to the time. We will be opening the doors. As many of you are able to make it, please come and welcome and thank those that are coming out to speak with us. All right. Is there any other new business has to come before this body? All right. If that's the case, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Second. So moved.
Ms. Robinson moved. Mr. Powell seconded. All in favor? Thank you.